You've built your dream team, your business is on fire, and then a client explodes, a deadline crumbles, and suddenly you're the boss who's having a meltdown while their employees covertly add that open to work badge on LinkedIn. Yeah, I get it. Dealing with emotional regulation while leading a team can feel like, I don't know, wrangling a pack of hyperactive puppies, but with way less cuteness and way more chaos. But hold on a second, because this chaos doesn't have to define your leadership. In this video, we're going to be cracking the code on emotional regulation for ADHD bosses like you and me, and we'll learn how to identify those triggers before they turn a meeting into a meltdown. Plus, we'll master some mindfulness techniques to keep your cool under pressure and build a business that thrives despite your neurodivergence and inspiring your team instead of freaking them out. Hi, I'm Megan Brame. I'm a 5-time award-winning advanced digital marketing strategist and entrepreneur. I help multi-passion creatives and entrepreneurs with ADHD develop business strategies that create consistent revenue streams across one or all, let's be honest, of their business ventures. And I am here to help you learn how to harness your ADHD for good. But first, let's establish what I'm talking about here. Do you ever feel like your emotions are running the show? 1 minute you're crushing goals and killing it, and then all of a sudden you have a minor setback that sends you into a tailspin. This, my friends, is the struggle of emotional dysregulation and ADHD. See, for us, emotions can be a double-edged sword. Our, let's say, fiery passion can fuel our creativity, but it can also lead to some pretty epic meltdowns. So what is emotional dysregulation? It basically means that, well, our emotions are a bit unregulated. We might feel things super intensely and have trouble calming down once we're fired up, or even struggle to identify what the emotion we're feeling is in the first place. Now, look, running a business with ADHD there's pros and cons to it. You know, you've got that incredible energy and creativity and focus, but on the other side live those really volatile emotions. I've noticed that entrepreneurs with ADHD tend to fall into one of two pitfalls. So for funsies, let's just call them Volcano Victoria, Spineless Susan. Volcano Victoria is the one where, let's say, like a client throws you a minor curveball, like they need to change a deadline, and suddenly you erupt because it throws everything off. You might feel justified, but watch out for the warning signs that you're taking it too far. A clenched jaw, rising voice, the urge to use all caps in your emails. This raging outburst or passive-aggressive email reply you're about to send can leave your team cowering and having to do damage control on client relationships. Well, newsflash, a scared team is a stagnant team, and clients won't trust someone who blows their top at the first sign of trouble. But then there's Spineless Susan, and like on the surface, Spineless Susan, she's pretty harmless, right? Like you have a fantastic idea, but then someone throws out like a half-baked suggestion or maybe like a constructive criticism, and you just go with it to avoid conflict. Now, that sounds like you hear a couple of signs to watch out for. If you're having a sinking feeling in your gut, if you're forcing a smile, or hearing the dreaded yes and that leads you down a path you didn't choose, those are all big signs that you're leaning into people pleasing. The next thing you know, your project's a tangled mess of everyone's priorities. Deadlines are missed and your vision gets lost in the shuffle. Clients get frustrated and your team loses respect for your leadership because you won't stand your ground or show conviction. Do you see the problem? We gotta find that ADHD entrepreneur equilibrium. It's about harnessing that fire, managing those emotions, and building a business that thrives on your unique energy. Imagine taking that emotional roller coaster and turning it instead into a high-speed train, focused, powerful, and heading exactly where you want your business to go. So how do we do that? How do we tame this emotional beast that's inside of us and become like an ADHD entrepreneur Zen master like that we always wanted to be? Let's dive into some practical strategies for how to do this. First, let's cover something that I think a lot of us struggle with. Should you tell your employees that you have ADHD? So I want to talk walking the line between transparency and oversharing. Here's the deal. There's no one-size-fits-all answer to that. On one hand, open communication is always a good thing. If you feel comfortable sharing your diagnosis and how that might affect your leadership style, it can foster understanding and even build a stronger team dynamic. For example, explaining that you might get hyper-focused on details or struggle to stay on topic during meetings can help your team adjust their approach and their communication style. However, it's also important to be strategic about disclosure. Sharing too much personal information can be overwhelming, and some employees might have misconceptions about ADHD that ends up harming everybody. Focus on how your ADHD can be a strength. Your boundless energy when you find something you're passionate about, your creative problem solving ability, and your ability to think outside the box. Ultimately the decision is yours. Consider your comfort level, your team dynamic, and the potential benefits and pitfalls. Whether you choose to disclose or not, remember to focus on your strengths as an ADHD entrepreneur and create a work environment that allows everyone to thrive. But look, let's be real here. Our natural tendency to overshare might end up getting the better of you anyhow. Just remember this. You do not owe anyone an explanation, and you are the boss. Now, if you have an employee that tells you they have ADHD and you're in the US, you'll need to offer accommodations if they request that. I am not a lawyer. I know nothing about HR, so I'm not going to dive into that here. But don't feel like you now need to tell them you too have the same issues. That won't be helpful despite your best intentions. Learn how to identify your triggers that can set off your emotional dysregulation. The first step is self-awareness. What situations, people, or events typically lead to emotional outbursts or decision fatigue? Recognizing those triggers allows you to anticipate and prepare for them. Next, remember your role. You are the one who's most on the line for the success of your company. Consequently, remember you need to be the manager, and sometimes that means you're the one people will look to for guidance. Next, write out your job description. Be specific about what tasks you think you as the business owner should do and stick to that. We tend to become fixers during times when nothing needed fixed, or at least didn't need our fix. And once you've done that, empower your team. You hired them because you felt they could do the job, so let them do the job. Don't try to put their fires out for them or middle manage. Move out of that micromanager role and focus on the growth of the business instead. Work on the business instead of in the business. Next, set them up for success by having a thorough onboarding process. I like to make walkthrough videos and have them in a dedicated Dropbox folder so people can see how I do things and the deliverables I expect. However, it's not set in stone. If they know a better way, then by all means. But I still keep these readily available for use and for reference, both for them and for myself too. Next, set guidelines for what requires your oversight and encourage people to fly out of the nest on their own. Also, put space between you and your employees so that you don't have the chance to send something impulsive. Set reply email wait times. Practice giving a default answer that you want to think about it first. Ask questions before giving an opinion. Utilize do not disturb or closed door office modes. Make sure that you set yourself up for success. Try your best to keep your expectations consistent when you're the boss. In my first business, every year I would change the packaging theme on my brand, and I cannot imagine how stressful that would have been if I had had employees, because it's a complete 180 switch, and I cannot imagine someone trying to navigate in that. Luckily, I just did it all to myself instead of anybody else. But yeah, that would have been a problem. I cannot imagine what that would have been like to have a boss that was like, you know what? We're gonna do a new switcheroo and change all the packaging right now. Let's go. Look, we all end up wanting a new shiny object in our business, but when you've got people working for you, you need to keep your strategy consistent because you'll throw off the momentum your employees have for successfully executing their tasks. Now, if you want to pivot branding, for example, then your next strategy meeting should involve brainstorming how to find the data that shows you whether or not a brand pivot is advisable. Your shiny object syndrome might not listen to that data, I know, but you'll at least have solid proof for either A, why a brand pivot would be a bad idea, or B, that it's the right avenue to go for a brand pivot, which lets you create an actionable plan instead of just setting everything on fire because of a whim. Next, rethink bad moments. We can tend to put off times where we need to give bad news to people, like performance reviews, layoffs, job role changes. It's often because our RSD tends to turn us into people pleasers and we can get walked over. Instead, reframe these moments in your head from a negative moment into something beneficial. A performance review isn't a time to tell someone they're not meeting your expectations, but instead is a time you can sit down one-on-one and figure out what the gaps are that need addressing. Is the job role too vague and confusing? Are there new tasks that come with the role that no one anticipated? Are there apps or training resources that can make the job easier? What's causing the gap between what you want them to achieve and their output? Also, self-care should be a priority for you and your staff. Don't set yourself up to become irritable easily. Sleep, water, meds, therapy, food, and moving your body. These are all important. Finally, accept you'll get it wrong. Remember that you're going for good enough and not perfection. There is no black and white about being a boss. There's always room for gray. There will be times you end up acting impulsively or erratically despite your best intentions. Apologize. Don't excuse or get defensive. Don't but the apology either. I'm sorry. It was wrong of me to treat you that way. I will do better. Remember, you are strong, capable, and can be one of those motivational leaders that creates die-hard employees that'll walk into the fire for you. But to do that, you've got to overcome one of the biggest setbacks we face, and that is rejection sensitivity, dysphoria. Basically, the voice in your head that makes mountains out of molehill. So follow me over to this next video where we learn how to silence that inner critic and keep your business dreams soaring. I'll see you over there.